In the last few days, I have read some of the craziest things on the comment section in this channel. First, there was a string of comments from a commenter who said that the PC platform was bad because the PC ports were coming out broken on it. In a sense, pretty much negating the realistic variable here, which is the developers. Because it's not like we haven't gotten hundreds, if not thousands, of pristine ports or builds, that's what I call them, on PC compared to consoles, which consoles have been locked at 30 FPS. In fact, even some games that are locked at 30 FPS till date on console can play at 60 FPS, but the developers have just not, either agreed for Xbox to unlock it as they've done, or decided to visit those games because they want to monetize that move up to 60 FPS. So how anyone can make those conclusions is funny. However, I think my point still continues to stand, which is one that, for the most part, gaming has always understood, but I guess fanboyism is more important to some people than actually getting, to the crux of the issue. This is regarding the video game Payday 3. Apparently, the developers came out and said that the game felt unfinished after a disastrous launch. This was the developers admit a year after disastrous launch. You see, a lot of these games have been coming out that way. If you see a game buggy, broken, having some performance issues, it's because they reached a point where they thought that this was a viable product that they could put out, start raking in money. Somebody from the financials is saying, let's capitalize on the pre-orders that we have, and then we can then, continue development and continue paying people, continue making investors feel cool, and then eventually at the end of the day, we're going to go ahead and patch it. In my video yesterday, I showed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of patch notes, because somebody was arguing that, the PC platform is so bad, this is why developers can't get the games working, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, there are patch notes for PlayStation and Xbox, and, it took them a while, but they finally got around to making a lot of changes that the game should have been, shipped with. Most of them AI changes, most of them performance changes. In fact, we've seen improvements in performance across the board in Dragon's Dogma 2. So it's not surprising to me that a Payday developer is coming to say that a game feels unfinished. We've known, sir. I don't think you can actually, add more to the conversation, which is very interesting, though. I would say kudos to you, but no, I'm not going to give you kudos for doing the right thing a year later, when we all knew and we all saw that the game was pretty much, in a sense, in a weird state from the reviews and from even the player base. I was reading a lot of the reviews at the time. I remember it came on Game Pass, too. Mike Straw writes, to say the launch of Payday 3 was bad would be an understatement. The game released with so many problems that Starbreeze CEO had to publicly apologize. Things only got worse at the time as updates to fix player concerns were regularly delayed. Now, over a year since its release, Starbreeze once again admits that the game's launch was disastrous, with the game feeling unfinished in a lot of ways. I guess I can give you kudos for apologizing, but again, at the same time, you guys were well aware inside of the studio that the game had some issues. But again, launch's got to launch and all that. And as someone who's a game developer, I fear, because these words will be used to hold me accountable if I screw up. Oh man, what have I signed up for? When you have a launch like we did, a disastrous launch where nobody's able to play the game, there's no place to hide. Starbreeze community head Almir Listo said in a new interview with PC Games and or something. But it's important that we don't use the technical issues as an excuse, because we clearly missed the mark from an experience point of view as well. Interesting. The game felt unfinished. It was a bad experience for our players. Listo added that while it's hard to make video games, I agree, it's very hard. It's even tougher to make a game after a successful game that lasted a decade. Andreas and myself were part of Payday 2 development team at that time, he said. Not everyone, 10 years on, was still there. I said this to you all the other day in the other video. I was telling you that one of the biggest challenges in terms of actually shipping these games nowadays is because a lot of the talent that's able to basically crank out some real grit in terms of development, most of them are either no longer developing. Many of them are leading teams of new developers. And, I'm going to have to just say mentality has changed. It really has. In today's world, anyone who you employ literally wants to be a social media techie that sits and goes to the lounge and drinks, bougie coffee and all of that stuff. Let me just speak my mind, man, because I work with young people every day. And their expectations are not based in reality. And I have to tell them and say, guys, you do know that those who are going to accomplish things are going to do things very differently and make sacrifices that not everybody wants to make. And I understand if you want to improve your quality of life and you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But here's the thing, that's how video games were made back then, to bring some spectacular titles to us. And if that grit is no longer found and everybody right now is just pretty much sitting pretty and letting investor money just come in and just, do the work and do the heavy lifting, we're not going to see some remarkable games. I can tell you how hard it is. It's so hard. Like, I'm literally in just a bit to do version 1 of pre-conceptualization, and already I'm doubting every single phase of my video game project that I'm working on. The doubt is immense, looking at the industry, looking at how everything is going, looking at other video games that have money backing them up, and looking at what they're able to achieve, and I'm just like, there's no way we can achieve that. So I can really, really feel for this guy. However, the admission is very interesting. To draw the exact right leaning from a 10-year production is challenging, but also every game project is different from one another. From another one, I think a lot of small things built up. Lead producer Andreas Penninger said that many of the problems came from the studio not doing their due diligence with what players actually wanted from the game. It ended up being a product that people didn't resonate with, he said. I think we're a bit confident from the success of Payday 2 that we ended up making decisions too quickly. With the game out for over a year and a number of updates released to players, Starbreeze is hoping that Payday 3 can have the same turnaround. Same turnaround games like Cyberpunk 2077 had after a less than ideal launch. Something we've learned is to try to understand the community, understand what made Payday 2 successful, and then try and translate that into a more modern context, Penninger said. While we haven't communicated what year 2 might be, for me, the game currently suffers from a split personality, trying to be too many things at once. Our focus needs to be a stronger core fantasy. Every heist needs to feel more tense, open-ended, and rewarding. This is very interesting to see, and, to be honest, yes, I did say just now that I'm not going to give a kudos. However, I will give a kudos for transparency at this point. It helps me learn, but I'm also a gamer too. Yes, I'm a wannabe game developer, but I'm a gamer at the end of the day. And I like to play nice, good games. I'm a little lenient with developers. At the end of the day, I am. And I have to say this, you're not going to see me chew developers out too hard, because I've walked a little bit. Maybe they've walked, thousands of miles. I've finally taken a step in their shoes, and I can tell you that this is crazy. Why they even decide to do this? But I'm also a public school educator, so some people walk a day in my mile and they quit. I've had a lot of friends and people that know me go substitute in the public school, and they look at me and say, "You're crazy." So I get it. We're all tuned differently for the things that we're able to do, and so I think this particular notion right here really does signify that in gaming we really need to take a look as to how games are made. We need to take a look as to what expectations are. We need to take a look that the audience right now is much more cynical. That's another thing, too, that many gamers probably would not admit. They're not enjoying games anymore because they're just, changing phases in their lives where video games have now become less important. So for them, if they pick up a video game, a small irritation could basically ruin the whole experience. Well, when we were kids, we just enjoyed it regardless of what the challenges were. If you get what I mean. Like, now I go back and play some old games, and I see a lot of, things that I consider weaknesses when, to me, they were fascinating back in the day. And I think this reality does spell out exactly what it is that game development is facing in today's day and age. Perhaps we're going to have people with a little bit more grit, with a little bit more risk up their bones, to probably come in and, I don't know, I won't say reinvent the wheel, but bring back what really has made, or what really did make video games quite phenomenal and significant back in the day. Thanks for watching the video. My thoughts on the matter. Peace out.